All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat today. You may have heard of Kid Rock, but you're about to hear from the comeback kid himself. 40,000 followers on his Investor Army YouTube channel. Connor Steinbrook coming up next on Cliff's Notes. Real estate agents, are you struggling with the day-to-day grind, dialing for dollars, putting in hours of floor time with little to show for it? Are you looking for tips, tricks, and tactics to accelerate your career as an agent that will have you closing more homes, working with more clients, and earning more money than ever before? Hi, my name's Cliff Freeman, and I've spent the past 2 decades of my real estate career running one of the top brokerages in DFW and personally coaching over 1,000 high-performing real estate professionals across North America. I created this podcast to share the strategies and tactics you need to explode your real estate business. I guarantee it. Oh, we're guaranteeing it today. Did you see these new pens we got for the group here? C3, are these amazing?
Yeah.
Man, these are like smooth writing. They're click good. They must be made in Germany or Japan or somewhere. Man, these are really slick. If you'd like one, just drop us a DM or put a note down in the chat box here in the text below. We'll get to it. Man, have we got something hot on the stove today?
Yeah.
I met this young man, I think the first time we met might have been back in Vegas, but it was one of our big events, and then ran into him recently at our holiday party here in Dallas. But this is a guy that will impress you from the minute you get within 15 feet of him. You know, they say that you have a force field around you, right? And when somebody's within 15 feet, they can sense that. Sabona, right? You can see them, as we say in Zulu. But I got to tell you what, we're going to go ahead and bring him on now. Connor, my dear friend, how are you, sir? Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm doing great, guys. How you doing? How y'all doing?
Doing awesome, man. Do you really have 40,000 followers on YouTube?
Yeah, I guess. Is that a lot?
Is that a lot?
You tell me.
I think it might be. I mean, you got a great show. I mean, it's like, that's an amazing feat to get to 40,000. But the story just sort of doesn't even begin to tell the whole story. I mean, you had to work to get there. For those of you who don't know Connor, this guy is an investment whiz kid, I guess we should say. You don't mind if I call you kid because you're a little younger than I am, right?
But you can call me whatever you want, Cliff.
Literally, I mean, in just a few short years, you have gone from really, when we'll talk about this, a pretty low place, to being now, Mr. Cash Flow and an investor. I mean, you could probably teach Robert Kiyosaki a little bit about investing, today with all the stuff you've done.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I've got a pretty substantial background in residential real estate investing, and I can kind of share how I got into that and kind of how it all played out, and also how we got into YouTube. But yeah, I mean, however I can help, let's dig in. I can share my story and
let's unpack it. Yeah, I think you have one of the most interesting stories I've heard in a long time, especially about following college. But where did you grow up? I believe you told me you grew up just north of Dallas, right?
Yeah, so I was in Atlanta till I was 4. My dad's a Presbyterian minister, so I grew up in the church. And then my dad was recruited, I guess, out of the pulpit. There was a wealthy group of individuals that made a lot of money in the oil pipelining, and they recruited my dad to move to Dallas to start building inner city charter schools around the country. So I moved to Plano, and I went to Huffman, Renner, Shepton, Plano West, and then went off to University of Oklahoma. And then I came back to Dallas.
Okay. And what year did you graduate from West?
Oh, man, 2003. Seems like forever now, but yeah, 2003. And then I went off and I graduated college in 2008.
2003 was yesterday, friend, let me tell you. Well, that's exciting. And you went to Oklahoma, right?
I'm Yep.
Boomer Sooner.
Just like
yeah.
Yep.
And after college, you got involved in a shall we say, not the typical career path. Tell us a little bit about what you did after college.
Yeah. It's actually before college, or when college started. So when I was a freshman in my dorm, It's a big deal. The online poker boom took off. A very similar thing that's happening with our company EXP was technology infused itself into a brick and mortar traditional business model. And you used to have to play at a casino, very expensive, time logistical headaches getting down there, and then the hand volumes you could play was low. So when online poker started, it kind of created this big exponential boom because anyone could hop on there, put time in at the beginning of that early adopter stage, and get good at what they're doing and make a lot of money on the internet. So I basically put $20 in a poker site when I was a freshman in my dorm, and started playing for pennies and then dollars and then tens of dollars and thousands of dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I kind of, over about an 8-year period, rose up to the top of the online poker world. And that's all I did for about 8 years to create a living for myself.
Did you say hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Yeah. So I wasn't expecting it, but my hobby, it became my profession. And, I got up to where I was playing in the upper middle, lower high stakes limits, if you guys know what I'm talking about in your poker player. So I was mainly multi-tabler. So what I would do is I'd play like 16 to 24 tables at a time, anywhere from like $400 to maybe $2,500 buy-in tables. And I'd multi-table and play large hand volume across a multi-tabling screen. So I had a big old monitor, and I'd just sit there and grind all day long, pretty much for every day, all day for the first 2 years I played. And that's how you get good at anything, is become obsessed with it, do it all day, every day, get enough data in a short amount of time so you can adjust off that data so you can figure out a strategy. And so a lot of people, I don't think, put enough time in a condensed window right when they start something. But that's pretty much what happened. I found a hobby I liked, put a lot of time into it, did it for fun, became a profession, and it changed my life for about 8 years until a bad day happened, which we can talk about.
What was that? Tell us about April 15th, 2000.
Yeah. So if you guys go back in the historical record, there was what's called Black Friday. This is April 15, 2011. It was the worst day of my life at one moment, but it was actually the best day of my life that led me into real estate, which I didn't realize till later. But this was a moment where they were having hard times regulating these websites. As you can imagine, they were offshores. Some of them were on islands. So the biggest poker sites that a lot of us made our living on, like Full Tilt Poker, PokerStars, and Ultimate Bet, overnight, we had no warning, were shut down, and the U.S. Department of Justice actually seized these poker sites and shut them down. So it'd literally be like if every single one of us woke up tomorrow and we found out we had to all turn our real estate licenses in, and if we owned real estate, turn our keys in, and the real estate industry was over overnight. So it wasn't just myself that lost everything. It was every single one of us that was creating a living doing this overnight, just like that, disappeared. So it was a very tough time for me, as well as all my friends. And that's kind of took me out at the knees, and I wasn't prepared for, I guess I was like a young kid going, you talked about the Cowboys earlier before we started this. I guess I was like a young athlete going into the NFL, where I was thinking I was going to have this huge income forever, and I wasn't prepared for it. So I was spending my money as fast as I made it, which was my first mistake in business, or I guess you could say in making income when I was young, and I wasn't prepared for it. So I'd spend all my money pretty much as fast as I made it, and I wasn't prepared. And when this one income stream I had, that it was a great income stream, and one skill set disappeared, I really had no way of creating an income. And this is when I realized a couple hard lessons in my life. So when you guys follow me on my channel, what I always talk about is multiple streams of income. I will never have one income stream again. I will always have duplication and leverage, meaning I'll never do it all on my own again, because if I played poker, kind of like a sales agent, it's all on us, right? When we're sick, we're tired, we're emotionally beat up, life liabilities, children, grandchildren, health issues, things like that, it's going to affect your income stream. So when that happened to me, I realized I'll never have one income stream again, and I'll never build a business that's solely reliant on my shoulders to carry the whole business.
So it sounds like you must have gone to Eminem's School of Finance then. Is that what you're
I went through,
me?
Go out there and fail as hard as you can, as fast as you can, and then learn how to not fail again. It's pretty much how you do it.
Right? Yeah. Wow. So that obviously led, and you developed some skills there, negotiating skills, I would assume, playing poker, that you could apply to real estate. But were you not able to go find casinos where you could get the same action, or was the leverage online because you were playing so many tables at once? Was it just impossible to create that in a physical brick and mortar thing?
Yeah, that's a good question, Cliff. There's a lot of things that, I could have. Some individuals moved out of country, moved to other different areas where you could have internet access. I did for a couple of years travel around to certain casinos. I traveled around the tournament circuit a little bit. WinStar Casino here at the border of Oklahoma and Texas is, I think, the biggest casino in the world. But the problem is with brick and mortar games is the slow process of how the game plays. So if I was playing one table online, I could probably play 20 times as many hands in 1 hour as I could playing live. And so I was a high pass a high pace, volume, aggressive type of player. If you guys play poker, you probably know what I'm talking about. And so to slow down and have patience and sit there at a casino and only get 200 hands a day is just not my nature. And also just there's not enough money coming through the system. Part of the reason why there was a lot of money and incomes being created through the internet process was because the consolidation of mass wealth all around the world being put into one system. So if you have, let's say, 1 million people on a site versus 100,000 versus 10,000, it's easier for money to trickle up to the top. So if you have a lot of people putting $50 to $100 a weekend at the low stakes, it kind of trickles up to the top, and it makes it easier for players with a lower skill set. Like think about like white belt to black belt. You're going to see the middle range belts get up to the top of the world a little bit easier. So their skill sets are lower, but the dollar volume that they're playing is a higher amount, if that makes sense. So once online poker kicked it, or disappeared and live poker was around, it just wasn't something I wanted to do anymore. Plus, I had a bad taste in my mouth, and I knew it wasn't what I was going to do going forward. So those are a couple of reasons why I stopped.
Yeah. I bet you got a few free hotel rooms though, huh?
Yeah.
And buffets. I basically had hotels and buffets whenever I wanted, because they knew how much I'd
Connor, wasn't there a movie
put through
made
the
about
system.
that? Wasn't there a movie made about that online poker thing dissolving? I forget what the movie's called, but
Yeah, there's
it's not
I think with like
21, but
Justin Timberlake and Ben
Yes,
Affleck. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
there's
yeah,
one.
that movie,
I forget what it's
yeah.
called. But yeah,
Anyways.
there's a number of movies. There's a lot of people making millions of dollars. Young kids. It was a weird window of time, and then it just kind of disappeared. And it's never come back the way it is. You can still play online poker now, but it'll never be back in that glory moment. There's too many accounts fragmented across too many smaller sites now. The benefit was early adopter stage, people that had huge disposable incomes, meaning they made money in business. For example, like now, if I went on there, I'd be playing more money than I probably should have at a skill set that I didn't have. And it would have been trickling down to the people coming up that had skill sets that didn't have the money to buy in, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
it just kind of messed up the game. And I don't think it'll ever go back the way it was. And plus, at the time, it was a great life in my mind. It's not like building a business where the emotional swings, if you're young watching this and you think you're going to go play poker, I did it. I was at the highest level. Do it for a hobby, do it for a side income, but don't do it profession, because the emotional swings, making 100 grand, losing it, going broke, starting over, it's a pretty vicious up and down emotional pattern. And it's just, you have a way better chance getting into real estate to change your life and change your family's future.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and talk about real estate then. So what was your entry point? When did you kind of get that
Zero
as
moment
we
of
like
truth.
to say here, what is it, C3?
ZMOT, moment of truth.
The zero moment
Yeah.
of truth, that real estate was your calling. And what happened? Did you have an epiphany or what?
Yeah. So basically played poor me and blame God, blame government, blame the world, blame poker sites, blamed anyone I could. If it was anyone I could blame it on, it was their fault, not mine, for like 2 years. And I just kind of fell into like a pretty dark, savage, deep depression. And then, I decided one day I'm going to live a lot longer. Maybe as well swing for the fences and try to become something more. And I had to pick a different path to go down. And what happened was I decided for some reason I got connected in the insurance space, and I was able to get an insurance license in like a week. And I joined a company called WFG. So some of y'all know what WFG is. It's a very similar company to how EXP operates, but in the insurance side. And I started to, go in there and attempt to sell insurance, but I liked the idea of building a team. Along this time, a number of individuals that were in that office were also in real estate, and they were talking about rental properties and residual income. And so I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I came across self-development. I went down, a lot of the similar path a lot of you guys probably have. I read Think and Grow Rich, went down the path of looking into people like Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, Bob Proctor, who just passed away. So shout out to him. He was a big impact on my life. And so I started reading a bunch of books and going down the educational system and self-education, and it built my confidence up just enough to go out there and get heard, I guess you could say. And I went to one of those weekend guru companies that tricked me into paying like $35,000 for their coaching course. And I did everything they told me to do, and it worked great. I ended up $100,000 in debt after 6 months, and I hadn't closed the deal. And what happened was, actually before this, I actually had to move back home with my parents, believe it or not. I'm just trying to be transparent. So some of you guys, if you're in this spot, I had to move back into my sister's bedroom, believe it or not, because mine was in storage. And I'm trying to build this business off like a bar stool, literally as a desk like this big and one laptop, and trying to figure out how to generate leads with nobody believing in me. My parents like, what is he doing? He was a poker player. Now he's going into real estate. And I struggled, and I actually got into a spot where I was almost bankrupt, and everybody told me to file for bankruptcy. And I basically said, my parents raised me better than this. I'm going to fight this all the way through. And so instead, I picked up a broom and got a job working for minimum wage, sweeping floors, believe it or not, at Academy Sports and Outdoors across from Tinseltown and Plano. And so I'd work 12, 14, 16-hour days. And at night, I'd go sweep floors just to get enough money to keep my websites going. Because if you want to go into this, this is when I taught myself internet marketing and social media and how to do YouTube. But so I ended up working for minimum wage while I'm struggling trying to build this business on the side.
That took some stones. By the way, that academy was one of we used to spend a lot of time and money in that academy back in the day. Probably
I chose that place because I like to be outdoors, and I was like, at least if I'm going to work and have to work for minimum wage, may as well get a discount on some of the hunting and fishing stuff I have. Right. But part of the reason why I made that decision, Cliff, was I didn't want to get trapped in a comfortable life. I had a degree. I could go get a corporate job, 40 to 80K a year. But I knew if I did, it could potentially push me away from my dreams and the life that I actually wanted to have, if that makes sense. So all I was trying to do was create enough income to keep like my online websites going and certain things that I was building out going, because I was feeling in my mind I was close to a breakthrough. And so what was happening at this time was I ran out of money, but I had time, and Google had just acquired YouTube. And so I was building private websites, teaching myself search engine optimization, teaching myself how to build WordPress websites out. And I realized if Google had just acquired YouTube, wouldn't this affect the algorithms and the rankings? And so I started building private YouTube channels and linking them to my websites, and it accidentally worked. And I built the #1 ranking websites in North Texas, and I went up to page 1 on #1 for most of the biggest keywords that you can, short tail and long tail keywords for most of the major markets in North Texas. And I started having an avalanche of leads coming in from the internet pretty much overnight is kind of how it all happened. And that's what led me into building my investment business. I went into wholesaling. I wholesaled a bunch of houses back in 2014, 15, was able to become financeable, I guess you could say, or I was able to start raising money. I started raising private money lenders, money from private money lenders. People had money in their IRAs. And I started to flip houses. Then I built a rental portfolio, started to add rentals, realized it was cash flow. It wasn't as much passive as I actually wanted it to be. So that's when I went into owner financing. I started selling some of those properties, taking back the note. I'd create notes. I'd sell some of them. I'd hold partial notes. And then along the way, I also started buying a lot of mobile homes on land and land deals. And so it all came from YouTube, and it all came from that horrific moment where I thought the world was over, which is why I tell people sometimes when bad things happen today, wait a little bit of time to look back from tomorrow, and you're gonna see that this is actually a good moment of your life, because it's what led me into real estate. That's kind of a synopsis of how we got here and how I got into YouTube.
Yeah, well, I want to go back, and I want to find out where that gene in you, in your DNA, that you just said something really interesting, that you could have taken a $40,000 to $80,000 a year job, but you felt like that was going to compromise you and put you in a box that you might not be able to get out of, or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. When did you first start realizing that you were an entrepreneur?
I've always been an entrepreneur. So I was like hustling in little businesses, even in grade school. Like I would like sneak on the golf courses and go in the creeks and pull the golf balls out and go sell them back to the doctors that were golfing. We used to, believe it or not, even when I was in grade school, we used to actually use real pencils. Some of you guys may remember that. And like we had these collectible college pencil pens that you used to put a quarter into and punch, and you pull out like 2 or 3 pens, and everybody was collecting certain pens. And I just remember being like, well, what if I borrow money from my mom, go to the principal, buy all the pens, and then control the market and sell them back to the school? And I was making like a lot of money as like a second grader doing this. So I've always kind of been an entrepreneur, but I think one part that resonated with me, which has always stuck with me, is that when I was in that, lonely time, that kind of darkness that a lot of us sometimes need to go through, unfortunately, to get to where we are now, I just always knew if, I look at someone like you, Cliff, or both you guys on here, or any successful person, and I just was like, they're a human just like me. They were born just like me. They had a consciousness just like me. If they can do it, I can do it. So that was always there. And then my dad really taught me some great lessons. So I have great parents, and my dad would never let me win at everything. And so I think we're in a weird world where entitlement's becoming, more and more common. And so like, just to give you an idea, like my dad's a very nice guy, but he's also a very competitive person. And so like I'd play chess and poker and cards with him when I was growing up. He would never let me win. In fact, he would beat me to the level he could beat me at, if that makes sense. So like he beat me over and over and over and over and over for years. And then finally, when I naturally could beat him, because I built my skill set up there, I beat him. He turned over the piece and never played me again. So that was one lesson that my dad taught me, is just never quit. And then also just, essentially to never play poor me and look down on myself, and that you can always become more than you are today. By working on yourself, you'll become more tomorrow. So the big one was that my dad just never let me quit anything that I ever did. And I just always had that belief, I guess, early on from that.
Was he your hero growing up, or did you have another hero?
Yeah, well, obviously my father's my hero. And also just point out, I have a lot of respect. I love seeing that you guys, both of you, are working together, because that's not that common in the world these days anymore. So I do respect what y'all are doing. And I think a lot of people do for that reason. I had a lot of heroes, and they weren't always like people that, like, I think a lot of people would traditionally think is a hero. These would be people that just are good people, that people that I'd see that I'd want to be like, someone that does something for someone else, that doesn't want something as far as recognition for, or just, helping a neighbor, or taking your time when you don't have to. And then obviously you have the big heroes, the athletes and things like that. But I had a lot of local family members, just good people that I saw. And then I also had experiences from a lot of bad people closely, I guess you could say. So I had a polarized kind of bucket list from different people I saw growing up, and I could see how certain people lived their life and where it took them, and I saw the other morals and values that others lived their life and where it took them. And so I had a wide range, and so I know that's not a defined answer like a certain person, but I was able to, I guess I'm always looking and studying people and looking in the future and saying, how did they get there? And so I found the people that were where I wanted to be, and I looked at what they were doing, and I tried to emulate it, if that makes sense.
I'm going to ask you, this may be tough, but I'm going to ask you, can you take us to some of those dark, toughest moments that you had, and tell us how your faith played a role in your journey through that?
Oh, yeah. So, and I try not to, and I'm never trying to make anybody feel insensitive, but, people always ask me, what's the number one thing that made me successful? And it's my faith system, 100% sure. And I did lose my faith for my 20s. I ran wild. I was a PK. I guess you've probably heard the term. And so I ran on the dark side of the world, and I've been on the good side of the world and everywhere in between. And so I have a good kind of pulse on this. But, one of the things is, when you guys are struggling, what creates that moment of hopelessness and that feeling that, the world's closing in upon you and everything's in a darkness and you can't see any hope, and there's no, that fear that there's never going to be a better future, and really, that everything's the best it's ever going to be. What happens a lot of times is external versus internal control. So what was going on was, I was blaming everything around me. I was blaming the poker sites. I was blaming God. I was blaming my parents. I was blaming everybody. But in reality, I should have been blaming myself, because I had made enough money that if I had done the right things with it, I could have invested into real estate and never had to work again at age 25. So when you blame things around you or circumstances around you in an external world, you're giving up your control to change your future, because you now give the control to everything externally around you that has to change for your results to change for you. And once you take internal control and blame for everything and personal responsibility, even for things that are not yours, it helps you get out of this. But this was a very tough time where I didn't understand how to think correctly. And I literally was at a suicidal point in my life where, I was battling these thoughts on an every other day basis. And so if you're listening to this right now, what I want you to understand is that when you're in that moment of darkness, you can't see light at any way, any direction, up, down, left, right, around you. So the only thing you can do is take a step and start moving in a direction. You don't know when the light's going to appear, but eventually you'll see a dot at the end of the tunnel, and then you move towards it, and it'll get brighter over time. But I was emotionally bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt, financially bankrupt, physically bankrupt. I mean, I was literally at rock bottom. Cliff, when I was working at Academy, I remember one night where I get called over. It's the day before Christmas, and being that my faith, this is a big time of the year for our family, and this is usually one of the happiest times. And I'm sitting there, and I get my name called over, and I show up, and some young kid that thought it'd been funny to take those airsoft BBs and pour like 50,000 over the ground, and so they're scattered all across the ground. And my boss is 18 years old, didn't graduate high school, hands me a broom, laughing at me, saying, "Sweep this up," And so I'm sitting there like, top of the world, had everything at my fingertips, didn't take it. I took it for granted, I guess you could say. So it's taken away from me. College educated, and I'm trying to figure out, how does this happen? How does someone go from the top of the world to now sweeping floors for minimum wage? How does this actually happen? And it was a very tough time for me. And at that moment, when you talk about the bounce moment, I guess, or the rock bottom moment, that was it for me. I said, I don't care if I ever sleep, eat, drink, anything ever again. There's no way I'm not going to be successful. I'm not going to have this. I'm not going to tolerate this. And that moment to get to commit in my mind to never stop is what happened. And I worked 1,100 days straight at that moment. I didn't take one day off. I'm not saying this to be cool. This is out of survival or fear, really, to be honest. And that moment of aggressive energy being pushed in the business out of fear of having everything lost and having no great future pulled me out of that darkness. And then once I was going through that window of time, I built a lot of skill sets that once I came out and became successful, it just propelled me exponentially even farther. But my message, I guess, would be for you guys right now is your future is not dictated by what's happening in your life today. And even though if you can't see the brightness, it is there. You have to start moving, and you'll see it if you move towards it.
Thanks for sharing that. We've had some really successful folks on this show, just like you, and I'd say that almost every single one of them had been to a place in life that they never, ever wanted to go back to again. Mm-hmm. I tell this story. What's my story, C3? What is it that Mike Fetchner used to tell me? Sometimes you got to hit rock bottom before you find out who the rock at the bottom is.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I would never change it. So I'm a big believer in what's called the law of polarity. So if you guys have been down, followed some of the stuff, law of vibration, law of compensation, things like this. The law of polarity is essentially this one moment made me understand this in my life. It's basically saying there can't be one without the other. So there can't be an up without a down, left without a right, in without an out, positive without a negative. And so how can one moment like that be the worst moment of my life, but also the best moment of my life? Because if that had not happened, I wouldn't have gone through this experience. I wouldn't be where I am today. It wouldn't have led me into real estate on the investing side, which led me to EXP, which led me to where we're at right now. So I think the way that you handle problems today dictate the size of the problems God or your faith system or the world will give you tomorrow. And so at one moment, I just realized that if I'm sitting here playing poor me and whining and complaining every time an HVAC goes out or a tenant doesn't pay me or a deal falls through or whatever it is, I'm basically saying to the power above me that's watching my life, I'm too weak to have a bigger problem. And so that hit hard for me when I realized that. So I look at problems now as opportunities to show I'm strong enough to have bigger problems now. And I think when people take that approach, it doesn't hurt as hard emotionally and physically in their body when they're dealing with these struggles and trials. But you guys need to understand growth comes from the back end of resistance and sacrifice. And so if you want to grow something big, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're going to go through this valley of the death, this sacrificial period where you're going to have to pay your dues. And this is also where you become the person that you're going to be that gets you to that next level. And so entrepreneurship, you've probably heard the term, is a self-realization process of building a new person and learning who you actually are as you go throughout this journey. But I'd think of it like this, guys. If you're struggling in your business, if you had a kid right now, would you ever take them to the gym and put 315 pounds on the bench press if they could only lift 135 pounds? You wouldn't do that because it would hurt them, could possibly kill them. So why would the world or God give you something too heavy to lift right now? So when you're going through adversity, do it in a way that someone else is watching and handle yourself with honor and maturity about it and see what happens if you get bigger problems. Now, when the bigger problems come, the bigger problems are equal in intention, I guess you could say, as just when you get stronger. So as your body gets stronger, you can lift 135 pounds 10 times. Well, that 10th rep is going to be just as hard when you can rep 225 10 times. That last rep is still that rep of resistance. And so you need to go to that point of resistance to grow anything in life, your mental state, your physical state, or whatever you're working on. So that's just, some of the things that helped me when I was kind of at that dark moment, kind of get out of it.
That's a soundbite. That's what you call that.
For sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Resilience muscles, and I'll just throw this in, every muscle needs to get torn down so that it grows back stronger,
100%.
Right? And so in order to develop resilience, you've got to feel that gravity, that force against you, so you can learn to push back harder. No question about it. All right.
Yep.
Wow, man, this is a Hall of Famer here. I'll tell you, Connor, you're amazing. Let's talk a little bit about real estate in the few minutes we have left. We don't have a lot of time, but you made a very conscious decision to move your real estate business, the brokerage transaction side and the traction side, to EXP. What was your thinking around that decision?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually had a unique transition into EXP. So I had been approached for years from some of my partners above me that were high level in the on the investing side of the business. So Ian Flanagan, who was a big investor here in North Texas, still is, and then Pat Hayes and Scott Lewis and some of them had been reaching out to me for about 2 years, not consistently, like I had conversations on and off, but I wasn't a licensed real estate agent at the time. Now, I'd been going back and forth for years to get my real estate license for a lot of different reasons. We can go over them if we have time. But what happened to me was after like 2 years of blowing off, Chris and Ian, everybody that kept trying to tell me it's the biggest opportunity in business, which it is. I was thankful enough and grateful enough to have a second chance, I guess you could say, because what happened was I was invited to speak at an owner financing conference in Mississippi. And I showed up there and I was put into a speaker's house with a couple other speakers. And it was about midnight one night, and a man walked in. Some of you guys know this man is to be Rob Flick, the number one guy in our company. And I'm sitting there about midnight and Rob walks in, don't know who he is. And I'm sitting on the couch with a couple other speakers and he's, asking us what we're doing, what we're speaking on. I told him, and then he tells me what he's going to speak on. He's like, EXP. I'm like, oh my gosh, this EXP stuff's everywhere. Everywhere I go, everybody's talking about EXP. And I'm like, Rob, it's getting a little late here. I'm going to have to go. I got to speak tomorrow, man. I'm going to go upstairs. And he pulls out the cloud. And so he starts telling me that he was part of the genesis of really building Keller Williams, was one of the most successful profit share earners. And he started telling me the story about Gene Frederick and some of these other leaders that had left Keller Williams. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm Googling him under the pillow, trying to see if he's telling the truth. I was like, okay, I'll hear him out. Then he starts showing me that he, at the moment, he was already making over 6 figures a month in residual income. And I know how difficult this is to do through investing, with the amount of capital you need to raise, the amount of time management, the motion management, working parts. And he told me he did it in just over 2 years. And he showed me his back office and it said like 105,000 or something like that. And this was in December or going into like September maybe of 2017. And I just remember saying, this is almost 10 months in, he's making $100,000. That's like 10 grand a month is what I was thinking in my mind. And he gave me this look like I'm the biggest idiot in the world. And he's like, that's my monthly income. And I was just like that scene from Wolf of Wall Street. I tell people, I was like, where it's like, you proved me make $72K a month, I'd quit my job, I work for you. I was like, Rob, if you prove to me that you're making $100,000 a month in a residual income stream with no assets, no tenants, no toilets, no termites, no capital to control it, and no back-end management system, I will go get my real estate license. I'll travel around the world and I'll build this organization. I'm gonna do a good job with you. And that's what happened. So I went home and got my real estate license and came into EXP. I recruited about 40 people my first year. We turned into like 151. Second year, we went into a little over 300. Third year to a little over 600. And last year, we went from 600 to 1,600. And we're starting to grow exponential right now, just trying to keep up with the pace that you guys are pushing and be like Cliff.
Well, I think, we're all chasing Brent and a couple of others here, but it's actually not chasing. We're pulling each other up is the term I like to use. So where do you see now that you're over here? How have things changed for you? Your crystal ball for Connor Steinbrook's life. Where do you see yourself in 2 or 3 years down the trail now?
Well, I don't want to go off on the rabbit hole, but I think I'm going to have to, I tell people lately, I spend the first half of my life fighting for my financial freedom. Hopefully I don't have to spend the second half of my life fighting for a real freedom, but we don't want to go down the rabbit hole there. But I was already at a point where I didn't need to work because I built a rental portfolio. But at the same time, I'm an entrepreneur and I want to take opportunities. And what else would I do? Sit on the couch. So entrepreneurs, this is like a game to me in a way. And so to me, to be honest, I saw this as a giant tournament because I came from the online poker world and I came from poker. And so I saw it as, instead of having to pay $10,000 to buy into a poker tournament where only a few people make $1 million, a couple $1 million, I can play a free tournament over here. Essentially, if I pay $85 a month, I have a great brokerage, incredible systems, great people to work with, but I have this optional team building model over here. And so that's kind of the way I saw it. And so I came in with really no expectations as far as, how it would go. But as it started to take off, I realized that my goals to get to kind of my lifetime residual incomes were going to be accelerated by decades because of EXP. So my goal right now is to continue to build this and then help as many of my partners pull them across the finish line. So my new goals are not for income, but for how many people in my organization that I can help set financially free. And a lot of that's just because I know how tough it is when we're fighting for our freedom financially, and I know what people are battling through. And so my goal is to help the people I care about get out of that as fast as possible, if that makes sense. So I have a goal to do that. And then I'm just going to do a lot of different things behind the scenes. My dad, I grew up in the nonprofit centers, in the nonprofit world. So I'll probably do something along the lines of that for most of the second half of my life. And I hope I don't have to, but if I have to, I'll run for some type of political position if I can make an impact. So these are just some of the things I've been thinking about recently.
Wow. Well, you're a young man well beyond your years. What do they call it? What kind of a soul is it? An old soul? Something like that.
Old soul.
You've done more in your young years than most people do in a lifetime. So congratulations. It's going to be great to follow you and watch you along the way. And, we're thankful to have you here today and share such great wisdom with, people who are in need. You had a great word for people watching today. And I just want to ask you, is there anything else that maybe we didn't get a chance to chat about? That's maybe a final word for our audience today, Connor?
Yeah, not really. I just maybe give you a compliment. Like a lot of times, I've been fortunate to meet a lot of big names, big entrepreneurs, and people behind the scenes, and not all of them are always the best of people. And I just want to, say thank you because, you've always been really nice to me, and you're a great person behind the scenes, and you're not, just coming up here putting on act. Cliff's the real deal behind the scenes, and not everybody I can say that for. So I just want to say thank you for doing what you're doing for our company, doing what you're doing for the industry, and also just grateful that you even would want to have me on here, since technically we're in the same company, but we're not in the same organization. So it's just a testimony to what you guys are doing. You inspire me, and I just wanted to give you that compliment right there.
Well, I appreciate it. It's one team, one dream. I kind of wish we didn't have different names for all the different things we do, but it's really all about we're glued together with stock and rev share, and it's never in the history of residential real estate has that ever existed. And you see the power now. We just crossed 75,000 agents, and when I joined, you remember we had less than 2,500 agents back in December of 2016. So it's been an incredible run, and we're just grateful to be having a tiger by the tail here, and to have some small part in the success of everybody that's invested here with us. So Connor, it's great to see you, man, and I can't wait to bump into you again in person. I know you'll be at one of the events again soon, either Vegas with us, or maybe you'll be in Cabo. I don't know what your plans are, but we're excited. And, actually you live so close here. We're kind of like neighbors, but, we might as well be in two different states, as busy as we stay and so forth. But thank you for your, again, sharing. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, again, your YouTube channel is called Investor Army. Is that right? How do we find you?
Yeah, guys, you can go check me out on Investor Army. You can just find me on Facebook, or, I can give you my cell phone number if you want. You can just text me at 469-855-6963. But you can just find me on the internet, on my websites, or on Investor Army or Facebook or Instagram. You can just send me a message if you want to reach out for any reason.
That's awesome. I got a feeling you may have a couple of people reaching out to you.
That content on there is sharp too.
Oh man. Oh, and
I spent about an hour yesterday looking through.
Yeah.
He's got over 300 and something YouTube videos.
I know it. He's giving Robert Kiyosaki a run for his money.
Yeah.
Trelvis, hey, my friend, we didn't want to forget about you. You doing all right today?
I'm good. All right. That was a great story, man.
Back there, it's a little chilly out here.
It got cold, man, and rainy and cold, kind of like the Cowboys, right?
Oh, God. It's still too early. It's still too soon, man.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again so much for being here. If it wasn't for you, there wouldn't be us. C3, great show, my man.
Yeah. Connor's a great guy.
Connor's amazing. Yeah. We'll be back next week, right? Are we live next week?
We are live next week.
Sorry, we've been traveling a lot, but we'll be back. We'll be back. That'll be the bloopers. We'll be back next week, so be sure you tune in. Catch us on Cliff's Notes. All right, folks, tune in to Cliff's Notes every Thursday at 1 o'clock Central for the tips, tricks, and tactics to explode your business. I guarantee it.